Resolution number 1. Whereas the Alabama League of Municipalities Annual Convention is its signature event as well as the venue for the League's annual business session, and whereas it takes strategic collaboration with numerous entities as well as many hours to plan, organize, and accomplish this event, and whereas the nationwide COVID-19 pandemic required the League to postpone and then restructure its 2020 annual convention, and whereas rescheduling, relocating, and restructuring the convention from Tuscaloosa to Montgomery and from 4 days to 1 required straightforward leadership and coordination from Tuscaloosa Mayor Walt Maddox and his team with League staff. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the delegates of the Alabama League of Municipalities and convention assembled in Montgomery, Alabama, on this, the 23rd day of July, 2020, that we respectfully thank Mayor Walt Maddox and the City of Tuscaloosa for their assistance, understanding, and support in rescheduling and relocating the 2020 annual convention, and for working closely with League leadership and staff throughout this process. Resolution number 2. Whereas on March 13th, Governor Ivey declared a state of emergency due to the spread of COVID-19, followed by an April 3rd stay-at-home order from the state health officer due to potential widespread exposure to an infectious agent posing significant risk of substantial harm to a large number of people. And whereas the rapidly evolving circumstances of this unprecedented pandemic required municipal governments to adjust quickly and with little or no precedent as how to proceed. And whereas the Alabama League of Municipalities immediately began working closely with statewide leaders, lawmakers, agencies, organizations, partners, and stakeholders to offer the best information, guidance, and pathway forward. And whereas responding to the daily challenges affecting local government's ability to function would have been chaotic, if not impossible, without collaboration, transparency, and compromise. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the delegates of the Alabama League of Municipalities in convention assembled in Montgomery, Alabama, on this, the 23rd day of July, 2020, that we commend Governor Kay Ivey and her administration, particularly Chief of Staff Joe Bonner, Finance Director Kelly Butler, Legal Counsel Will Parker, and Legislative Director William Fillmore, Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth, State Health Officer Scott Harris, Attorney General Steve Marshall and his Opinions Division, Alabama's legislative leadership, Alabama's congressional delegation, the Conference of Black Mayors, the National League of Cities, and the many elected officials and lawmakers from around the state who included the League in their video town hall meetings and task force discussions for their leadership and courage to protect Alabama's citizens while trying to limit the damage to lives and livelihoods. Be it further resolved that the Alabama League of Municipalities is also especially grateful for the assistance of Tuscaloosa Chief Financial Officer Susan Snowden, as well as attorneys Ben Goldman and Shane Black with Han Arundel Harrison Sell, for their unique municipal insight and professional guidance throughout the pandemic and as Alabama's cities and towns attempt to normalize and rebuild their economies. Resolution number 3. Whereas Alabama's municipalities are responsible for providing services and protecting the well-being of citizens, and whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant and historic impact on municipal revenue streams, possibly endangering the ability to provide essential services, and whereas in the early weeks of the pandemic, the Alabama League of Municipalities formed the ALM Stimulus Task Force to determine the immediate economic impact of COVID-19 on Alabama's cities and towns, particularly through the loss of sales and use taxes, motor fuel taxes, lodgings taxes, rental taxes, and occupational taxes, to provide a sound basis for Governor Ivey and Alabama's congressional delegation to fairly distribute potential federal stimulus aid to communities in an effort to keep them solvent. And whereas the task force is chaired by League immediate past president, Athens Mayor Ronnie Marks, and is comprised of municipal officials from throughout Alabama, including Mayor Lee Dollar, Gunnersville, and ALM President, Councilmember Adam Bourne, Chickasaw, and Chair of ALM's Committee on State and Federal Legislation, Mayor Gary Fuller, Opelika, Mayor Tony Haygood, Tuskegee, Mayor Walt Maddox, Tuscaloosa, Mayor Mark Saliba, Dothan, Mayor Robert Kraft, Gulf Shores, Councilmember Bridget Jordan Smith, Vincent, Mayor Holly Cost Montevallo, as well as support from Tuscaloosa Chief Financial Officer Susan Snowden, Tuscaloosa Communications Specialist Alex House, and Mobile Executive Director of Finance Paul Wesch. And whereas the members met multiple times via conference call and teleconference to determine the necessary resources and establish a matrix for gathering accurate information on a per municipality basis, now therefore be it resolved by the delegates of the Alabama League of Municipalities in convention assembled in Montgomery, Alabama, on this, the 23rd day of July 2020, that we applaud the efforts of the ALM Stimulus Task Force to address the challenges to municipal revenue sources brought on by COVID-19. Be it further resolved that the Alabama League of Municipalities will continue to support the Stimulus Task Force as it determines best practices and develops guidance following this unprecedented disturbance in Alabama's history. Resolution number 4. Whereas Alabama's municipalities are responsible for providing services and protecting the well-being of all citizens regardless of race or national origin, and whereas around the world people were shocked and angered by the tragic actions that led to the senseless death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and whereas George Floyd's death is one that should have never happened and is a tragedy for which too many people, especially African Americans, are all too familiar. And whereas, as a result of collective anger and frustration, many citizens came together across Alabama to peacefully protest, but in some instances those protests turned violent, resulting in harm to people and damage to property. And whereas, in the words of the Congressman and Alabama native John Lewis, rioting, looting, and burning is not the way. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the delegates of the Alabama League of Municipalities in convention assembled in Montgomery, Alabama, on this, the 23rd day of July 2020, that we support and protect the right of the people of Alabama to peacefully lift their voices, even in anger and frustration, and publicly demonstrate in nonviolent ways. Be it further resolved that the Alabama League of Municipalities will continue to condemn systemic racism and violence in any form against people or property.